Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and welcome to Reflections from Torch Trust, the show that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm Marilyn Baker, and I'm so looking forward to spending the next hour with you as we celebrate and reflect on some of the highlights of 2025. It's been a year of encouragement, innovation and heartfelt stories, and in today's show we'll revisit some of the most memorable voices and moments from across the year. Our first highlight takes us back to January, when Lynn Davies spoke to sound engineer Peter Boscher about an exciting collaboration with the RNIB, a new initiative called Sound Without Sight. It's a hub for blind and partially sighted performers, engineers, and creative people working with sound. Let's take a listen.
You're still involved, though, with the RNIB. First of all, the Sound Without Sight project. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
I always thought that music and sound would be ideal fields for blind people to work in. It's a kind of a stereotype, all blind people are good at music. Of course, that's not true. But for obvious reasons, audio, music, radio are things which we are interested in. At a certain point, maybe 10 years ago or so, I thought we actually have to try to do something about this. And I got some blind people together who were working in the field, in music and audio, and we had some funding for a pilot project from Drake Music, which is a great organisation. It's a cross-disability organisation encouraging disabled musicians, and they helped with this pilot project. It was called Vibe at the time. Fast forwarding to 2020 and COVID, at that time I thought there's got to be something we can do. And during COVID, I contacted people in the blindness field, so people from RNIB, people from the music industry, people from academia, with a proposal. At the time it was called Music and Sound with Accessibility. So the idea was we should build a network to support blind musicians and audio makers to find the solutions that I was talking about to these barriers, to share the information, because it was never easy to find what you needed to find. If you're starting from scratch, how do you use such and such a bit of software, which is the most accessible, which is the easiest one to use, how can you find equipment that's usable? All that kind of information it's out there if you're really, really persistent, but it's not brought together in one place. So there's the accessibility side. There's also all sorts of questions around if you're a performer, how do you promote your music? How do you make videos for YouTube? How do you do the social networking side of it to promote your music? So many things which, again, are more difficult for blind people. They're not impossible, but they're more difficult. So the information about how to do these things, some people who are already succeeding can share their experiences and knowledge. And we held a series of meetings where we defined, okay, this is what the project should be, this is what we should do, this is what it should look like. We needed a project manager, and by what I really do think was divine intervention, I was put in touch with Jay Pocknell, who is now our project manager, and he had been thinking along very similar lines. He was developing a project called Sound Without Sight, and he had worked as an audio engineer, and he's partially sighted, but very, very similar thoughts to what we'd already been doing. So we invited him, the steering group invited him to be project manager, and that steering group still exists. We work with Jay. We launched Sound Without Sight officially last year at the Google Accessibility Centre, and it's gone from strength to strength. It's now we run monthly meetups online, which we've had a series of guests from the different areas that I've mentioned. So musicians, people specialising in audio technology, Braille music, and those happen every month. We also encourage people to share their knowledge, and there are articles published regularly. All of this you can find at the website, which is soundwithoutsight.org.
Who is Sound Without Sight for? If someone's listening and they're in some kind of sound or performance space, can they just approach Sound Without Sight?
Absolutely. You'll find on the website, you will find the section called Get Involved, or join the community, or whatever. And so absolutely. And as for who's it for, it's for anyone with an interest. That could include a musician who simply wants to be able to play or sing in a choir or play in a band. It could be someone who wants to be a professional musician. It could be someone who wants to work in audio, or who is already working in audio. So any level, but also for educators. So for people working in schools and universities who have to support blind people. So it's quite wide ranging, and that in a way has been something we've had to deal with, because it does cover a number of different areas, but I think they are all linked, and I think the website is a good way to understand how this all hangs together.
Now, if you'd like to get involved with this exciting project, go to www.soundwithoutsight.com. Next, we hear about the Hope for All project, one of the major initiatives launched by Torch this year. It provides audio Bible players to blind and partially sighted children in the UK, embedded in cuddly lambs. Torch CEO Sarah Dawkins begins by explaining what inspired the project.
Torch is all about wanting to enable people who have sight loss or are blind, partially sighted, to be able to access Christian resources. So we do that in lots of ways, as I'm sure is covered on Reflections in various different times. But one of the things we've realised in recent years is that we don't have very much for children. And so what we wanted to do was to create something that would be specifically for children. And so what's needed is something that is sensory, but sensory in a different way. And so we've created these lambs that are soft and cuddly and furry. And these lambs have got in them a audio player that plays a recording of a book called the Jesus Storybook Bible that was written by a lady called Sally Lloyd-Jones. But it's been recorded by David Suchet, who people will know either as the voice of Poirot or the voice of the Pathway Player Bibles that Torch Trust has also given away in recent years.
Yeah, because this project is kind of a spin on the pathways, isn't it? Because the pathways are great for adults, but yeah, probably not that interesting for a child. Why lambs?
There was a limit to the animals that we could get made like this. But the reason that we actually went for the lamb was a very practical one, because the lamb enabled the player to be internal, whereas the other animals had little pockets to put the player in. And so because it's internal, it means it's suitable for children that are younger. So that's why we went for it. So this is suitable for children from the age of 3. That obviously younger children with parental help would be able to use it as well. But also, I love the fact that it was a lamb, because it's such a biblical idea as an animal. So Jesus is the Lamb of God, and we can walk up to Easter, and lambs are in the fields, and you hear them bleating. So actually a lamb fit really well, but the large choice was practical. But actually, I think it's a really great and exciting thing.
You've got one with you now. Can you describe it? And can you try and describe the texture of the lamb as well as sort of the physical attributes of it, so to speak?
Yeah, well, one thing I've tried to do is spend a long time holding it with my eyes closed to try and understand what it would be like for someone without sight. So, and what I've noticed by doing that is the amount of different textures that are in it. So, if we start at his nose it sticks out a little bit, but it's a really soft fur around the nose and eye area. So the face is really soft, almost like a really soft velvet. He's then got two eyes that are hard and round that you can then feel. And then going into his body, it's like, well, I don't know if you've ever stroked a sheep. It feels like the wool on a sheep. So he's soft, but also it's a bit firmer and it's a little bit rougher. And then again, we've got the same velvet on his legs and feet. And also his ears. The inside of his ears is this really soft velvet, whereas the outside is the slightly firmer sheep-like wool texture.
If I can visualize things with my fingers, I'm visualizing it now, and it sounds absolutely adorable. And how big is this lamb?
It's roughly the size of two adult hands together.
Okay, so quite small, but
Mhm.
still big enough to be quite substantial in a sense that it's not easy to lose the lamb.
No, it wouldn't be easy to lose the lamb. And also thinking about children holding him, actually, if it's a quite a small child, they would be able to hold him and carry him quite easily.
So where is this player embedded then, and how does it work?
So the player is on his tummy. So if you lie him upside down, there's a zip, and the player is just in there. So, and that's where you can then put the charging cable to charge him, and it just zips back up, so it's out of the way. And you turn him on actually by squeezing his nose. It feels a little bit mean, but you squeeze his nose and he turns on. And one of the factors that I really like that I think, sadly will be lost, doesn't translate well for those without sight, is that when you turn him on, he gets like a little red dot, which looks like a heartbeat. So that's how you can tell that he's turned on. But again, you do need sight for that, which is a bit of a downside for the product. Oh, that was me just turning him on straight away.
Okay. So yes, I can hear a little voice there. Yeah, that sounds really adorable with the heartbeat. So now he's all turned on and ready to play. How does he work, so to speak?
Turns him on with the nose, he comes on straight away, which is what you heard a glimpse of a minute ago. But you can then change the file. So you can either flip through the files or flip through the folders using his paws. So each of the four paws does different things. And so if I can just put him back off pause, you might be able to hear. And many hours to. Hello, and welcome to your gift from the torch. The beginning.
Our next guest really did have to surrender everything to God when she lost her hearing after surgery for NF2, a nasty illness that produces benign tumours. Author Emily Owen was a lifelong music lover and still is, despite becoming profoundly deaf. Her memoir, Still Emily, is both inspirational and honest. And earlier this year, she joined Lynn Davies to talk about her story.
For those who are not familiar with your story, can you share your story with NF2?
So my story with NF2 began before I'd even heard of NF2. So if people haven't heard of NF2, I understand that. But basically, NF2 is a condition where you grow tumours on nerves anywhere in the body. And my NF2 was diagnosed when there were some tumours on my auditory nerves, and they grew so big that they were squashing my brainstem, and my balance was very bad, and I had headaches. And so they diagnosed NF2. They removed the tumours, and that left me deaf. So I wasn't born deaf, but I am now deaf.
You talk a lot about being a music lover. How has your love for music evolved after you became deaf?
It's interesting, before I lost my hearing at the age of 21, music was a huge part of my life. I played various instruments in bands and orchestras and worship groups at church. And, music was literally the backing track of my life. then obviously overnight in surgery that disappeared. But I'm always thankful that I have quite a good music memory. That doesn't mean I don't wish I could hear music again. I would love to hear music again. But I do have a good music memory, so I can still play things to myself in my head. I still sing in the shower. So my relationship with music has probably evolved in as much as so now if I'm in church and a worship song comes up and I have never heard it before, I can see the words on the screen, but I can't hear the music. So what I tend to do is actually make up my own tune to that song. So I still can sing it in my head. Don't worry, I don't sing it out loud, but I can sing it in my head. And so that is an evolving of my relationship with music.
I have never seen, but I don't consider myself blind in my head. How do you consider yourself? Are you deaf in your own world?
It's really interesting. I feel as though I'm a hearing person who can't hear, if that makes sense. I still feel like a hearing person, but my ears don't work. So yeah, the inner me feels more hearing than deaf, I think. In terms of voices, I don't know if I can remember people's voices or not. One thing I do remember from hearing is accents. So if somebody speaks with a, for example, Scottish or Welsh accent, or even English as a second language, I can see on their lips that they have a different accent.
So one thing that really also struck me when I read your book was your very unshakable faith. Did you ever wrestle with God through your journey? And because you do talk about this, why me and why not me?
Yeah, I think in terms of have I ever wrestled with God, the short answer would be yes. Because when things are difficult in life, I don't believe that God says, don't question me, don't talk to me, back away, just carry on as though everything's fine. I think he wants us to bring our struggles to him and to be honest about them. And I remember one particular time when I was going for surgery, because I have a lot of surgeries, and I kind of told God, I don't want to do this anymore. I've had far too many surgeries than anyone my age should have had, actually than anyone should have had, and I don't want to do it anymore. So I told him the plan. I said, I'll go into the anaesthetic room, I'll have the anaesthetic, but I don't want to wake up after it. And I sort of thought God would go, okay, yeah, we won't wake you up. But God said, no, you will wake up. And so I remember saying to him in kind of conversation, saying, but how am I going to do this life that I don't want, that I didn't choose? And he said these two words to me that really, really stuck with me. He said, you need to let go. And I realized he was right, because I was trying to live holding on to everything I used to be, rather than living here I am now and looking ahead. So I gradually did begin to let go, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always easy. But when I let go, it's handing things over to God. So if I have a frustration about what I can't do anymore, I do take that and I acknowledge it, but I also give it to God, and he helps me keep going.
If you'd like to hear more of Emily's journey, Still Emily is available to buy or borrow in Braille, giant print or audio. Just contact Client Services using the details at the end of the programme. Now, being able to read the Bible in your own language is something many of us take for granted, especially if you speak English. But for blind and partially sighted people around the world, that hasn't always been the case. Compass Braille works alongside Torch to produce and distribute Braille Bibles globally. This next clip is from an interview with Reverend Samuel Affel from the Ghana Bible Society, talking about the first ever Braille Bible in Assante Twi and how this historic collaboration came to be.
tell me about the collaboration between the Ghana Bible Society and Compass Braille. Was that something you actively sought out, or how did it come about?
So for me, I joined the Bible Society of Ghana in June last year. And so the first time that I saw a rep from the Compass Braille was when we went to Uganda, where I met Jake. And I was so excited because I knew we've been working with a Compass Braille for a long time. In fact, our relationship started from per history. The Bible Society of Ghana heard about the Compass Braille through its network with the United Bible Society Fellowship. And so we know that Compass Braille has developed, a strong reputation globally for its expertise in producing high quality Bible Braille portions and resources for the visually impaired. So given the growing need for accessibility in scriptures in Ghana, we also deemed it fit to build a lot more stronger relationship with Compass Braille to make it even more easier. And I was impressed when I met Jake, and he was excited to support us to get our first local translation in Braille and done. And I would say within a space of about 3 months, this whole thing has been completed, and we have our Braille materials. And so I think that the collaboration is excellent, and we are so much grateful for Compass Braille for always being available to support us anytime we need these Braille materials.
So is this the first Twi Braille Bible, or has there been any like it before?
Yeah, so this is the first Twi. In fact, this is the first local language translation that we have done for Braille. So, but we have the existing in English, mainly the Bible portions that we have in Braille are all in English. So this is the first local language Braille material that we have had by the support of Compass Braille.
And does this Braille Bible have any significance to blind people in Ghana beyond getting access to scriptures?
Absolutely, absolutely. So in our line of work, we travel around, and one of the key concerns that we picked up from the persons with visual disability is their inability to relate to scriptures from their own background in terms of their own language. If you go to the schools, their colleagues in the various institutions read their Bibles in their local languages. They read their portions in their local languages. But when it comes to the PVDs, they are limited. So it was a concern. It's been a concern everywhere we go. So I think that this becomes very significant for us in looking at how impactful it's going to be, reaching out to people who will be able to read the Bible in their own local languages. And for us, Assante Twi is one of the commonest languages we have here in Ghana. And so many people can relate. Many people are able to read that language because it's like, if you look at Ghana, it's almost like the easiest language that anybody can relate to. And so it becomes very significant having the Bible in Braille in Assante Twi, because many people would then begin to relate to it. And it creates an assurance, a kind of an assurance for those who have not been able to get their Braille materials in their local language. Because at least if we have been able to do for Assante Twi, then there is that hope that by and by it would also get to their portion. So I think it's an exciting news, especially for the blind community and the associations. I mean, we've contacted some of the associations of the Blind Society, and they are excited and they are ready to receive this material with open arms. So I think that, Lane, if you said, I would say, if you asked, I would say that yes, it's been very impactful, and I believe that this is it's not going to be the first. We are hoping to have more collaborations with Compass Braille to ensure that we get more Braille materials available for our persons living with visual disability here in Ghana.
Now for something truly remarkable. Carl Beech is the inventor of the Beech Band, a device originally developed to help him walk and speak more clearly after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. His innovation has already helped many others, and in this next highlight you'll hear just how life-changing it's been. He's in conversation with Torch Trust's Chris Byland.
Carl Beech is one of the UK's most innovative Christians. He's written books, he's been a financial advisor, a church planter, youth worker, senior pastor of a large multi-congregational church. He's the man behind the festival The Gathering, has served on several important church-run backgrounds. But you might also know him for his work with Christian Vision for Men, CVM, the Christian men's ministry, which brings men closer to God. All in all, he's so driven and a fairly unstoppable source. In 2003, Carl was diagnosed at the age of 51 with young onset Parkinson's. And while you might think that this would slow him down, he's actually on a mission to bring about change for those living with the condition through the Beech Band. We're going to find out more about it now. Carl, thanks for joining us on Reflections. So let's talk about it. What is it and how does it work?
Well, I did tell the origin story, and I came back from a trip to Congo. So this something called the Freedom and Justice Partnership with Mark Preston. We're trying to, free these 40,000 kids cobalt mining in slave conditions. I did quite a hairy trip with Mark to the artisanal mines with some of the first Westerners to get in there. And then I went straight on a speaking tour of Australia, and the stress of it impacted my voice. My slight slur went to complete stammer and vocal freeze. For about 2 weeks, I couldn't speak properly at all. And I phoned my neurologist and he said it was incurable. He said about 6% of people get this. You're unfortunately one of them. I think the brain tries to protect you. I'm a public speaker, so it shuts down the functions that are draining you most. I didn't perceive it was, but that's clear what's happened. It's not reversible. And I couldn't speak. But being told something's incurable, impossible, kind of fires me. I'm like, yeah, well, let's have a go. So I set my mind to trying to work this out. And, I had all these other symptoms too. I dragging my leg and dystonia, like that's cramp on steroids, and back pain and slight tremor started, which now can be quite vigorous. And I thought, how can I nail this? And I was getting anxiety. I've never been anxious or fearful in my life. And suddenly I was fearful about walking into Starbucks. I could please it with confidence and then not walk into the coffee shop. It's weird. So I started to research all these things, and to cut a long story short, I realized that what they've been teaching us about these things was incorrect, in my view. That we're taught cueing, which is if you're dragging your leg, it's because your autopilot's bust. So you aim for a line in the pavement, or you tap a stick out in front of you and you shoot your leg for that. And in speech, you point a grid on a bit of paper. So you sound like C-3PO and you look like him. You're robotic. But I figured the signal was for my brain, not for me, not a direct signal for me. It wasn't me that needed to tap something up. My brain needed to hear something. And then I had a wild thought. Where's the safest place I've ever been? I thought it'd be my mother's room. Well, if I could recreate a heartbeat to trick my brain I'm calm all the time. And what if I could recreate this signal? And then I had a thought. If it's for my brain, I've got to ignore it. I can't say I knew this. I was eating a double-decker watching Apocalypse Now and all these thoughts collided. And my wife was away, so I just sat in my chair and I tapped a beat on my chest, like 70 beats a minute-ish. A mother's heartbeat, pregnant, a bit higher, elevated than the rest of your heart rate. And I could speak. My vocal freeze dropped. And I looked in the mirror, my face mask had gone. And then I started walking around my living room and I wasn't dragging my leg. And I noticed my hands felt loose and I wasn't getting foot drop. And then I thought, after I cried a bit, I think I've just cured stammering for 80 million people. I can't believe it. So I phoned my mate, Nick, who is down on the patent office's co-inventor. I said, I've got an idea for a device. And it's called Beech Band, because the first one we built, I had an idea for a rubber band with a haptic in it. Take the haptic out, put a mobile phone motor in it, clip into a battery and make it vibrate. It turned out it needed a big battery pack, so we ditched that idea, but it worked. I still got the original one, actually, locked in another location, but it worked. Then I thought we could give this away to millions. And then we formed a company to sell it as cheap as possible, give 25% to charity. And along the way, we discovered, I had this idea, if this attacks Parkinson's, it might attack other autoimmune conditions. So far, we've seen stroke victims swallow and speak again. MS people can walk again without sticks. We've seen Tourette's cured. We've seen many tics resolved, benign essential tremor, many Parkinson's symptoms resolved. People get out of wheelchairs. I mean, it's honestly bonkers. Dyslexia even. the words stop moving about on the page for people with dyslexia. I've seen it time after time. It bursts into tears. I can read again.
So it's really just calming people down and helping them in all sorts of ways.
It distracts the brain. It sends a new signal to the basal ganglia that the brain, if you ignore it, the science now says, we've worked out, the science says that the brain will create neuroplasticity and reroute around damage if it's a subconscious signal. More than that, the beat that I set it at, the megahertz, as I say, it matches the region of the brain that vibrates in the basal ganglia. Exactly the same frequency. And I set it by intuition. Turns out it's exactly the same.
Wow, that's really clever. Now, we've been talking now for, 10 minutes? And anybody that's just joining us to listen to this, they'll say, oh, you don't have Parkinson's, but you're wearing the band, aren't you?
Yeah,
What happens if you turn it off?
I show you. So can I just say there's a wire coming out of this because I had the cable didn't work, and this is actually doesn't beat at the correct resonance. I was playing around with something to try and resolve tremor, because it does solve Parkinson's tremor, but not everyone's. So we need to adjust the frequency for some tremors. It resolves all benign essential tremor. If I turn it off,
And if I was to ask you how your day is, for example,
it's incredibly hard to speak.
wow.
It will take all my concentration now. So then you will see that my face is going solid.
Yeah, I can see. For anybody that's listening to this, Carl's really just changed from being one person who, if you didn't know he was wearing the band, to someone completely different, to someone that you would typically see with Parkinson's.
And I don't know about you, but I was truly struck by the transformation in his speech when he removed the band. If you'd like to learn more about the invention, visit www.beechband.com. That's BEECH. The Hope for All project wasn't the only new venture at Torch this year. Another exciting development was the launch of our new chaplaincy service, designed to support people who may be emotionally affected by sight loss. Here's Sarah Brookman with more about the heart behind it.
Can you tell us a little bit, please, about the chaplaincy service and how it came about?
Yeah, so the Torch Chaplaincy venture kind of was in the back of my mind, having coordinated the befriending service that Torch used to run a number of years ago, alongside my colleague Janet Erdley. So always at the back of my mind, I think, was a sense that I really saw the value in people feeling supported as they journeyed through sight loss. And there was something about knowing they were kind of less alone in that. We know that there's such a big impact for people as they lose their sight, or indeed as their sight changes. Maybe it's not straight away, but as time goes on. And so the sense that somebody is alongside just to kind of navigate that journey felt really important. So the chaplaincy service is designed to be able to offer emotional and spiritual support to anyone over the age of 18 who is losing their sight. And we hope that it will be really reaching people who could really benefit from just having a timely conversation with somebody who has either experienced sight loss themselves, or maybe somebody who is sight loss friendly, as we call it, and kind of sight loss informed, so that they can be a supportive presence over the phone.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want anyone to be calling and asking for support around their sight loss and then have the person saying, oh, poor you, because they wouldn't be experienced. So that is obviously to avoid that kind of thing.
Yes, we will just have a very small team of Christian volunteers who really do understand the nature of what people might be going through as they lose their sight or as things change in their lives. And often that's, I think, the thing. There's often a lot of change and, perhaps a loss of meaning and purpose. There's the emotional impact that we know that people who are going through sight loss tend to report less mental well-being. That's a kind of known thing. So there's the emotional side. There's also the spiritual side. I think for some people, that's a really important part of their lives. They might have been somebody who's been at church, and of course, church has changed, and it's not so easy to make the connections or to get there. But also, it might be that they have bigger questions now, and more questions, and want to just be able to have the opportunity to talk through about the concerns that they may have, whether they're big ones or little ones. We just know that sometimes having a listening ear gives some space for people to share those, and we hope that that will be really helpful.
I mean, you have sort of alluded to it a little bit, and obviously with Torch being a Christian charity, but how would you say the chaplaincy is different from sort of regular counselling service or calling the Samaritans or anything sort of related to other sight loss charities?
Yeah, I think specifically thought about the word chaplaincy because we hope that most people, whether with a faith or not, and we very much hope chaplaincy will reach out to people of regardless of their religious affiliation. But there's something in that word, I think, that I hope that people will understand means that they can bring that side of their lives into the conversation if they want to, that chaplaincy is usually there to offer some care and support emotionally, but also can, should people choose, offer some spiritual support. And the volunteers will be willing and able to do that, but very much it will be to follow what the person coming wants to talk about.
And now we come to our New Year's message. Here is Torch's CEO, Sarah Dawkins, sharing her thoughts and prayers as we prepare to enter 2026.
525,600 minutes. If you, like me, are a musical theatre fan, then you probably know what that equals. It equals a year. A year has 525,600 minutes. Now, as we come to the end of 2025, I wonder how that feels to you. Does that feel like those minutes have dragged on, or maybe they've passed way too quickly? Maybe you can think of those moments of love and care from friends and family, and think of really warm minutes. Maybe there's been portions of those minutes that have just felt so sad and hard, maybe marked by grief. And it can be hard to think how exactly we sum up a year. How do we measure a year? That is the question that this song asks. And it gives us some suggestions in the song. In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter, in strife. They're quite good measures of life, aren't they? We all know what it is to experience a sunset, to be awake at midnight, to laugh, to experience strife. These are things that are common to all of humanity. But is that how we measure a year? As much as I love Rent, and particularly this song, Seasons of Love, I think there is only one answer, which actually the song does say. You get to the chorus and it says, how about love? Measure in love. I wonder how well you felt loved this year. Maybe, like me, you've had a big birthday and maybe felt really overwhelmed by the amount of love that people showed you. Maybe you have felt a real absence of love, maybe through grief, maybe through different situations in your life. But love is something that in some ways is hard to measure, but we know when it's there and we know when it isn't. So as we approach the end of 2025, I thought it'd be really helpful for us to look at what the Bible says is love. Now, there's so many places we could go. I am absolutely sure that everybody listening right now has had a Bible verse go off in their head, or a saying that they think is from the Bible about what love is. And actually, interestingly, the book of the Bible I have spent the most time in this year is a book called Lamentations. And to lament is to be expressing sadness and sorrow. So maybe that feels like a strange choice to you. And in some ways it is. But actually what I have grown to love about this book of the Bible this year is how real it is. Seasons of Love talks about maybe counting a year about strife and counting the strife that there's been. And that is true, that is one way. Lamentations is like, no, there is strife and it's real. But look, there is love. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 23 say, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." Now, however you have felt this year, whether you have felt that you have been loved so well and you're so thankful, or whether you have felt that you've not been loved at all, or even if you're just somewhere in between, I don't think any of us would say that we have felt love every one of those 525,600 minutes. And yet we have been. Because often we measure love that we can experience and we can feel and it's tangible. But we know that when we love people, that's not always the case, is it? Actually, we can experience love and loving people, and they may not see it as that. They may not feel that love, even though we really love them. And the Bible passage here is saying the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. It is true that the Lord loves, that God himself loves, and it never ceases. It never ends. Isn't that amazing? Maybe today, at the dawn of a new year, you feel unloved. Maybe you feel really well loved by the people around you. But humans are humans. We will never love anybody perfectly. But the message here is, whatever the background of your life is, whether it's full of strife or full of love, the steadfast love of the Lord will never cease. His mercies will never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Isn't that an amazing message to go into this new year with? Whether you think about the next 525,600 minutes positively or negatively, no matter how you feel, the truth is that all of us are loved by God. All of us can experience that steadfast love of the Lord. Just a few days ago, we marked Christmas, and God himself, who came to earth so that we can all know the God of the universe. It's an incredible way to start the year, knowing that we are secure in love by God, and it has been shown and demonstrated to us because Jesus, God himself, came to be with us. Happy New Year, one and all.
I can't believe we've already reached the end of the show and the end of another year. Time really does fly, doesn't it? But we'll be back next week when we'll be talking about the Epiphany and also hear how Christmas is celebrated in the Coptic Church. If you'd like to find out more about anything we've mentioned on today's programme, including the Hope for All project, the Chaplaincy service, or the Torch Library, you can get in touch with our lovely and helpful client services team. The number to call is 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260, or you can email info@torchtrust.org. You can also find us on social media. Just search for Torch Trust on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reflections, and so until next week, from me, Marilyn, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye, and we wish you a new year that is full of very special moments, discovering more of God's goodness and strength. God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.